Okay, it is now my honor to introduce our guest of honor, Major Thomas Deierlein, United States Army. Major Deierlein is a West Point graduate, successful entrepreneur, airborne ranger, combat wounded military veteran, and philanthropist. A Bronze Star and Purple Heart recipient, Tom is a retired United States Army major and Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran. Tom spent his early years in the military, first earning his airborne ranger qualification, then onto various leadership positions with the Berlin Brigade. Tom gained extensive leadership and operations experience while leading 3 different organizations and coordinating activities for over 800 personnel from 4 countries. In late 2005, Tom was serving as a civil affairs officer in East Baghdad, where he helped manage over $290 million in reconstruction and economic development projects. In September 2006, he was shot by a sniper and critically wounded. After 8 months of intensive care, Tom returned to the business world in June of 2007. Tom was recently named the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and is co-founder and chief executive officer of ThunderCat technology that specializes in data center solutions for the federal government. Although started only 4 short years ago, ThunderCat is already ranked number 125 on the Forbes list of America's most promising companies. Tom's call sign in Baghdad was ThunderCat 6, hence the name for his company, ThunderCat Technology. In the fall of 2006, a foundation was started by Tom and others to assist Iraqi and Afghani children. To date, they have provided more than 30 life-saving surgeries and over $150,000 in school supplies. Tom is a certified peer mentor with the Wounded Warrior Project and mentor with the CARE Coalition. He coaches and supports severely wounded and disabled soldiers and their families. Tom is a founding member of the Board of Advisors of the Troops First Foundation. Lastly, Tom serves on the Board of Directors of the Joseph Reverso Foundation, a scholarship fund for student athletes named in the memory of his grammar and high school friend who lost his life on 9/11. Ladies and gentlemen, you know you've done some cool things in life when they put you on the NBC Nightly News. Video, please.
For their poignancy and honesty. But finally tonight, our series Making a Difference and some unusual dispatches from Iraq. Soldiers' letters from the battlefield have long touched the nation for their poignancy and honesty. But the emails from the soldier you're about to meet started a movement that brought smiles to one of Baghdad's toughest neighborhoods. And that's not an easy thing to do. Here's NBC's Lee Cowan.
Deierlein, Sadr City, 2005, the center of squalor outside Baghdad. Tom Deierlein had just arrived, called up by the Army from his New York advertising job to help make hell a little more livable.
Envision the most destitute and poorest and dirtiest of slums that you've either ever seen on TV, or imagined.
He had a flair for writing, and soon his emails home developed a theme.
I really don't need anything personally right now, but if you want to, please think of inner city children and what they need. I'm driving down these streets every day anyway. What is it going to hurt to stop for 10 minutes and hand out some shoes or some candy or some clothes?
His advertising friends were well connected, and soon all those things, plus school supplies, even vitamins, were making Baghdad by the boxload. And because it was all his, there was no red tape, no complicated chain of command to get it distributed. Tom just did it, until a sniper ended it all.
I was shot literally within a minute of that photo. God, that's me right there, dude. I cannot believe I'm going to die right here in this street. That's all I was thinking.
His pelvis was shattered. He had to learn to walk again and endures painful physical therapy every single day. But through it all, even from his hospital bed.
And my company continues to do the best they can at helping the people in East Baghdad.
Sadr City's kids never left his mind, and the donations never stopped coming. So while he was recovering, those advertising buddies started a foundation in Tom's name. It never skipped a beat. By the time Tom got back to work, the foundation had raised more than $120,000.
Even if you just affect 10 families, 100 families, or 100 children, I think it's doing something good. nothing, it helps the impression of Americans over there.
Number one.
His Solder City ambassadors now are other soldiers,
You play football today?
doling out solace and soccer balls, pencils and paper. Tom may never return to Solder City, but he's changed it a little, all from the bottom up. Lee Cowan, NBC News, New York.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you Major Tom Deierlein, United States Army.
I don't want to start off my speech by lowering the bar, but when my wife heard the narrator Romana Pilipich give her speech on freedom, my wife asked me to excuse myself and rehearse my speech in the men's room. I said, I'm one step out of you, honey. I'm just going to invite her up to give my speech. But truly, I am honored and in awe of this entire group of young individuals, and I'm honored to be invited to an event with such a prestigious and accomplished group. I understand that this is the Navy Distinguished Unit with academic honors every year since 2004. That puts them in the top 10% of the ROTC programs nationwide. There's 251 cadets, which represents 27% of the student body, and their retention rate is double the national average. That's a phenomenal group. And in my go ahead. And as I've said to a few of the cadets already, I said I've been a part of many a military event, and this one was run as tight as anything I've ever seen. It really, really is impressive. It did not get past me that I was an Army guy being invited to a Navy ball, but I do have some cred. My father is a Marine, and about 2 weeks before I graduated from college, I was dropping off some books at home, and my father met me at the door, and he says, "How you doing there, Lieutenant?" And I said, two things. One, let's not count our chickens before they hatch. I don't know how I did in that last exam. Two, keep in mind I'll be an officer and you were enlisted in the Marines. My dad, with a quick wit, didn't skip a beat, he looked me dead in the eye and he says, "That's right, son. And in the Marines, they taught us that a corporal was the equivalent of a captain in the Army, so we'll start with sir and work our way from there." As pointed out, I am a West Pointer, and I understand that 102 cadets have recently completed a mini boot camp there at Camp Natural Bridge, including the Leadership Reaction Course. 102? Raise your hands. Come find me after dinner. I did it a quarter century ago. To me, it seems like yesterday, and I'd love to hear what it's like to go through that today. The theme for tonight is liberty, celebrating liberty and freedom. And like the commander, I came up with a quote from Ronald Reagan. I felt it fitting for this particular group because at a young age you've decided to step up and get involved in your school and your community, and you've decided to serve. And here's the full quote. "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free." That's a challenge for this group that's coming up. That's a challenge for all the cadets that are here to make sure that you're that next generation that's coming forward and in service, helping protect our freedoms that we've all worked so hard for. Whenever I think about celebrating freedom or liberty, it brings me back to a cold night in October in 1990. I was there at Brandenburg Gate, which was the division of East and West Berlin. It was less than 1 year after the fall of the wall. There were 1 million people at that gate, 1 million people. And at the stroke of midnight, you could have heard a pin drop. And then the fireworks started, and blasting in the air, and all of a sudden everyone starts crying and hugging and kissing. Bottles of champagne are just being, I don't know where they came from, they're just being passed from person to person. This was a group of individuals that truly understood freedom. They had been separated, families, cousins, friends had been separated for almost 30 years. They were celebrating liberty because they knew what it was like to finally be reunified and free of oppression and tyranny. And I even get goosebumps tonight when I'm talking about it. It was a phenomenal, phenomenal experience. In Iraq, my experience was a little more sophisticated, and I guess it's a little more complex. And the lessons that I took in terms of liberty and freedom in Iraq is that it is difficult. And if you think about Iraq, they're a very communal society. There are plenty of folks there that believe in theocracy, and they were part of a socialist economic system. And the Americans, we celebrate individualism. We celebrate democracy, right? We celebrate capitalism. So it may take a generation, it may even take 2 generations for them to truly recognize the liberties and freedoms that they're going to have. Keep in mind, we even in America, it took us over 100 years before truly all men and women were free. So I think that that's going to be an exciting thing for those folks, and it really speaks to America. Because we could have just grabbed the villain and left. But instead we stayed and are creating a better future for millions of people, and that's really what makes America different. Bethel High School's mission is developing lifelong learners who are responsible citizens and independent, critical thinkers prepared to meet life's challenge. And so what I'm asking each of you to do tonight is to become that critical thinker and just recognize that your definition of freedom, or what you think of as liberty, is not the same as everyone else. If there's 620 folks here tonight, we would get 620 definitions. And whether you're involved in a charity, a nonprofit, a government, or the military service, just recognize that your definition may be slightly different than those that you're trying to liberate or help. To me, freedom and liberty are fundamentally about the right to make your own choices, the ability to make decisions for yourself, and then live with your consequences. So I wanted to share a few of my choices, some of which were highlighted by the commander in that film. I was out for 12 years. So I was in Berlin, I got out of the military in 1993, and I got called back out of the individual ready reserves after 12 years. I was sure they had made a mistake. And when I reported for duty for a year and a half, they admitted, yes, they had in fact made a mistake. But I chose to stay and I chose to serve anyway. That was celebrating freedom. When I arrived, 2 weeks after I got to East Baghdad, I had begun the transition. A cushy job showed up in the green zone, a desk job where I could have done economic development, a job that I had been pursuing for 6 months since I got called up. But I turned that job down because I had already made commitments to my soldiers and I had made commitments to my Iraqi counterparts. That's celebrating freedom. When I got shot, I could have chosen to let that become what defines me for the rest of my life. I could have gotten depressed, I could have made excuses. But I made a different choice. In fact, I talked for 20 years about doing a triathlon, and I didn't complete my first triathlon until more than a year after a doctor told me I'd never walk again. When I took half my life savings and decided to start a company with a cartoon name, there was plenty of people that told me that it was a really bad idea. But now, as you've heard, we're over 200 million in revenue, and we're one of Forbes' America's most promising companies. And with the TD Foundation that you saw highlighted in the film, right, I could have left Iraq battered, bruised, and broken, and never looked back. But thanks to the help of folks like Mary Kay and others, we started the Deierlein Foundation. And now we've saved almost 50 lives. We've shipped over 150,000 of school supplies, $25,000 worth of vitamins. I guess in each of these cases, I just felt I was free to make my own decisions. To me, that was the exercise. That was exercising my rights and therefore celebrating liberty. So speaking of decisions, if you'll allow me to, I want to take a moment to address the young women here in this group. I want to challenge you to make a decision today. I want you to make a decision and make a commitment to be better, to be the best. My mother told me that life isn't fair. I'm one of 9 kids, so I got that lesson on a regular basis, that life isn't fair. And so my message to the women in this group isn't that everything's going to be fair and it's an even playing field, because I believe it's not. I believe it's harder. But if you make that commitment to be the absolute best, That's what this country needs. America needs strong women leaders. The military does. Your colleges do. Nonprofits do. Businesses need strong women leaders. It's been in the press a lot lately over the last couple weeks that they're going to start allowing women in combat, and I have to admit I haven't been following the papers that closely because to me this was non-news. I served with women in combat already. Two of the best soldiers in my unit were women. And in fact, here's a bit of an embarrassing story. When I first got to Baghdad, keep in mind I'd been out of the military for 12 years, and here I was arriving in Baghdad, and I was scared. And I was getting ready to step into a Humvee to get from Liberty, which is where my airplane had landed, to a forward operating base, Loyalty, about 10 miles away. And the first gunner I had was a woman. And she looked meaner than a junkyard dog. And I got in the Humvee and I plopped down, I'm sitting there, I hope I'm not shaking. My eyes are wide as saucers, and I just sit down. I'd already made a mistake, and she looked down at me. She grabbed my rifle, and with a swipe of her wrist, she looked at me and said, "Sir, muzzle down." There was never a doubt in my mind that soldier was going to get me to safety. About an hour after we arrived at the forward operating base, out she comes after having a shower. She could have been a cheerleader at the local college. So I'm not saying that you need to sacrifice your femininity to be a great soldier and a great leader. Julie Atzer was a supply platoon leader with the 101st. I was deployed with her. She ran fuel supply convoys, which are now widely acknowledged as the most dangerous missions in country in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And no one worried that she was a woman. So that's just my point there for all the women leaders. In terms of my thoughts, I was asked to share some thoughts on success, and I want to point out some things that I feel that have made me successful, and hopefully you can take some of these points to look forward toward your own success. The first one is I'm not the smartest. I'm not necessarily even the hardest working, but I had grit. I had persistence, and I never, ever quit. In fact, there's a new study from a psychologist, Angela Duckworth, and I encourage you to look this up on YouTube. Just type in grit and Angela Duckworth, and this video will come up. And it's showing that persistence and resilience is the #1 determinant of high success. Not just success, but high success. Not intelligence, not emotional IQ. And I'll talk to you about my favorite quote. It's from President Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is filled with educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So that's the first one, persistence. Number 2, get involved in your local community. From my understanding that the cadets have already completed hundreds of hours of community service, including the Pancreatic Cancer Walk, the Relay for Life, the Bethel Brotherhood in Action Food Drive, numerous color guards, funding and placing 45 American flags in the downtown lampposts, placing and collecting hundreds of flags at our veterans' graves. And most recently, I understand that Operation Sweet Tooth got over 100 pounds of candy to former graduates of this program. Number 3, be a mentor and have a mentor. And I don't care if you're 8 or 80, this is just something that you should do. If you're a freshman, find an 8th grader and mentor them. If you're a senior, mentor a freshman. Everyone would benefit from having a mentor relationship, both being a mentor and having a mentor, someone that's fundamentally focused on your own personal growth, short-term and long-term. Number 4, and this also follows along with Bethel High School's mission, you can help them fulfill it. Leaders are readers. Be committed to a lifelong learning process. Number 5, integrity and honor. Everyone needs leaders with values, and I know that you folks study this every day. And technology is changing, and societies are evolving, but one thing that will always remain the same, it's always going to be about the people. And people want leaders they can trust. Number 6, now I'm going to open this up not just to the young women in this room. This is to everybody. Be the best you can be. It's not a mistake that the marching drill championships in May, that you folks are going to that. That didn't happen by mistake, and by the way, good luck. Somebody made a choice, and then a group made a choice, and then they dedicated themselves, and they put forth the time and the energy and the effort to be the absolute best that they can. I was at the Space Kennedy Center about 8 years ago, just doing the typical touristy thing, and I walked into a Q&A, a question and answer session with an astronaut, Walt Cunningham. He's a retired Marine colonel, and he was the lunar module pilot on Apollo 7. And someone said to him, they raise your hand, what advice do you have for our younger folks who may aspire to become an astronaut? I loved his answer so much, I scrambled for literally a napkin and started scribbling his answer because I was so impressed. He kind of turned it around. He didn't just want to address the younger folks. He said, it doesn't matter whether you are young or old. The most important thing you can do is work hard at your current job. Be the best you can at whatever you're doing, whether it is being a student or whatever. That's the best way to prepare for whatever challenges you will seek or encounter in the future. So be the best you can. In closing, the cadets asked me to say a few words, since some of them will not actually have a chance to be up on this podium. They asked me to let you know that they feel very fortunate to have the support of their parents, the town of Bethel, and especially the veterans and the ROTC boosters. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Your support is not gone unnoticed or unappreciated. A round of applause. Thank you for having me, and it's been truly an honor to be here with you this evening. Good night.
Thank you, Major. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause, please. Major Tom Deierlein, United States Army. Combat wounded veteran. Put it on the line for us. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, the cadets would like to offer a token of appreciation to Major Deierlein. The battalion staff, please join me. Speaking on behalf of the cadets is our Cadet Executive Officer, Cadet Kenneth Roper.
Sir, on behalf of the Corps Cadets and the battalion staff here, we'd like to thank you so much for coming and thank you for being here. And we'd like to extend this token of our appreciation for helping us renew our sense of liberty and freedom for everybody.